Throughout literature, some stories transcend the confines of the page, leaping into new dimensions through various adaptations. Anthony Burgess's A Clockwork Orange stands as a testament to this transformative power. A Clockwork Orange has undergone metamorphoses that both captivated and challenged audiences. The most famous instance of this is Stanley Kubrick's controversial and visually arresting 1971 film, which is on screen now. Through the lenses of different directors, actors, and artistic visions, the narrative's complexities have been reinterpreted, offering slightly different perspectives on societal control, free will, and the human condition. As time continues, A Clockwork Orange remains a magnetic force, drawing creators to explore its themes in new ways, ensuring its place as a timeless exploration of morality, freedom, and the fragility of societal structures. Join me as we delve deeper into A Clockwork Orange's adaptations, exploring the different interpretations that have brought this iconic narrative to life. And it all started with this man right here. After serving in the British Army in World War II, Anthony Burgess began his career as a writer. His early works varied widely in genre and style, including novels, literary criticism, and essays. Burgess's writing career gained traction with novels like The Long Day Wanes and Enemy in the Blanket. His works often reflected his wide-ranging interests in music, linguistics, and social issues. And then in 1962, Anthony Burgess published A Clockwork Orange. After this, the novel immediately sparked intense controversy and fascination. The book's explicit language, violent themes, and exploration of morality stirred debate and garnered both acclaim and criticism. Some praised Burgess's linguistic intensiveness with the creation of Nadsat, the slang used by the teenage protagonists, while others condemned its graphic and violent content. The book's explicit language and depictions of violence led to it being banned in some places, further fueling the controversy surrounding its release. However, despite this controversy, A Clockwork Orange also gained significant attention for its bold exploration of societal control, free will, and the ethics of rehabilitation. Next, we have Andy Warhol. Warhol was a leading figure in the pop art movement, renowned for his avant-garde approach to art and culture. His iconic works, such as the Campbell's soup cans and Marilyn Monroe portraits, challenged traditional artistic norms, elevating everyday objects into art. Warhol's studio, The Factory, became a hub for artistic collaboration and experimentation, solidifying his status as a cultural icon of the 20th century. In 1965, 3 years after the release of Burgess's A Clockwork Orange, Andy Warhol released the first, albeit loose, adaptation of the novel, which he entitled Vinyl. This was an hour and 10 minutes long, and while Warhol used many of the same plot points as Burgess, many elements were altered and abbreviated to have its own identity. The film, known for its experimental nature, minimal dialogue, and elongated scenes, once again received mixed reviews and was viewed as provocative for its time. Nowadays, however, most reviews tend to be more negative, as it currently has an IMDb score of 4.2. Even so, Vinyl also exemplified Warhol's inclination toward pushing artistic boundaries. As you'll see later on, the film is pretty bare bones. They used one camera for the entire film, did it all in one take, and it was filmed in black and white. I originally chalked this up to the film being so old, but then I realized The Sound of Music came out in the same year. So I think this was an intentional effort by Warhol to make a statement. It's because of these reasons that this is my least favorite adaptation we'll talk about today, but it makes some interesting choices. Finally, we have Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick was a visionary filmmaker with a diverse filmography, spanning genres like noir, science fiction, and satire, including iconic works such as 2001: A Space Odyssey and Dr. Strangelove. Kubrick's meticulous approach to filmmaking, attention to detail, and thematic depth solidified his reputation as a pioneering director in the cinematic landscape. And so, in 1971, 6 years after Vinyl and 9 years after the original A Clockwork Orange was published, Stanley Kubrick released his own, more faithful adaptation of A Clockwork Orange under the same name. As opposed to Vinyl, Kubrick's film was about 2 times as long, at 2 hours and 16 minutes. It was also shot in color, and it is nowadays considered to be the best film adaptation of the novel, as it has an IMDb score of 8.3. While both the films start with a slow pan out from the character's face, the novel puts us straight in the action. I think the main reason for the slow start is to introduce us to the protagonists and to build tension. I feel this would also work well in the book, aside from the fact that it would be kind of hard to create a slow pan from the character's face in a book. But I also think the authors often have to grab readers' attention right away so they don't put the book down. The start of the novel involves many scenes of ultraviolence, or extreme violence. However, many of these and other scenes had to be cut, as Kubrick faced pressure from both censorship boards and governmental authorities to tone down the film's explicit content. This also resulted in the included scenes having violence often happen off screen. Vinyl only keeps one of these ultraviolence scenes, and it is actually the only scene Vinyl adapted from the novel that A Clockwork Orange did not. In this scene, Victor, whose name was changed from Alex, is seen ripping pages out of a scholar's book. To me, this is one of the most lazy of the ultraviolent scenes, but I think Warhol chose this as the film had such a low budget. Compared to the 71 film, this makes the vinyl character of Victor appear a lot less brutal than Alex and more like a bully, as this is one of the worst things he does. In the original Clockwork Orange, Alex runs into two 10-year-old girls, takes them back to his house, gets them drunk, and rapes them. On the other hand, in the movie, Alex meets two girls who seem to be his own age, 15, and takes them to his place for consensual sex. This is a little hard to judge their age because it doesn't explicitly state, and also the actor who plays Alex isn't actually 15, but his character is. But the characters of those women seem to be the same age, so it's a little tricky. Um, but anyway, this was most likely changed to tame down the source material for a wider audience. It makes Alex a somewhat more redeeming character, if you can even call him that, as there are still other instances of rape in the movie. The iconic Singing in the Rain scene shows Alex and his gang of droogs breaking into a couple's home. During the assault, Alex sings Singing in the Rain while callously attacking the husband and committing the brutal rape of his wife. The scene is intentionally distressing and confrontational, illustrating the extreme violence and depravity within Alex's character. This also shows Alex's love of music, mirroring Burgess's. Alex is also shown to love classical music and other parts of the novel and film. Victor, on the other hand, still loves music but seems to prefer rock and roll as opposed to classical. This is shown by a 5.5 minute dance sequence in which we see Victor violently jam out to some music. In both cases, we get to see our protagonist care about something peaceful and everyday, making them more relatable to the audience. I think the use of rock and roll music would complement Alex more than the classical music, as rock and roll gives him the aesthetic of not fitting in with society, whereas classical music provides more of an eerie contrast to what his character actually is. The alternative aesthetic of Victor can also be seen in his clothes. He dons a leather jacket with a white undershirt and greased back hair. This mirrors how teens at the time were rebelling against what society expected of them. Kubrick actually also changed the appearance of the Droogs from the original novel. Originally, they wore black tights, waistcoats, shoulder pads, and off white cravats, while in the movie, they ended up wearing all white jumpsuits, white codpieces, and black bowler hats. I suspect this was changed to make the world feel less familiar and more dystopian, as when you take a first look at these outfits, it takes you a while to kind of process what you're seeing. In Vinyl, Alex's three Droog sidekicks are replaced with a single character, Scumbaby, who ends up turning him into the police, just like the gang of Droogs do in A Clockwork Orange. I interpret this as more of an infinite and hurtful betrayer for Victor compared to the crew that leaves Alex, even if it isn't very well executed. But I also just love the name Scumbaby as it describes the character perfectly for turning Victor in. And I think the actor for Victor did too, as he repeats the name several times whenever he talks to him. After Alex is captured, he undergoes something called the Ludovico technique, which is supposed to make him incapable of any type of violence. In all three adaptations, the selection process for the Ludovico technique differs. In the original novel, Alex is selected because he is thought to be the worst of the prisoners, and if he can be cured, then anyone can. Whereas in the 71 film, he's chosen because he happens to speak up at the right time, so practically at random. I feel like this is a more scary scenario as it makes it more likely that this society has less restrictions on who it will hurt for their progress. And in Vinyl, Victor is simply asked if he wants to undergo the process when he is admitted to prison, as if he's not the first to undergo this treatment. In this case, this tells the audience that this society has accepted torture as a way to fix people, but again, it's justified because it benefits the rest of society. The Clockwork Orange movie adaptation of the Ludovico technique itself is pretty similar to the novel. Basically, Alex is injected with drugs that make him sick, and he's forced to watch extreme acts of violence while his eyes are held open, while his favorite music happens to be playing. Vinyl's visual appearance of the technique is quite different, however, and it's not quite clear why he has to wear a black mask, but I would wonder if maybe it's to hold his eyes open. And while it doesn't explicitly say, it seems like possibly they're still giving him drugs. But even so, both are chilling in their own ways. But I think seeing the clamps on someone's eyelids makes you squirm a bit more. Also, knowing he's on painful drugs makes the society seem even more punishing and controlling. In the same section of Vinyl, we also hear Victor mention flickers, or the movies he's being shown. Meanwhile, in the original, these are called viddies. Also, the phrase in and out, referring to sex, was also changed to the old up yours in Vinyl. And I think Warhol changed the language that was invented in the first book to be a bit darker to complement the show's alternative aesthetic. Towards the end of the novel, Alex reunites with the author whose wife he had previously raped and killed. One notable change in the movie version is how the writer is in a wheelchair while in the book he can still walk. Perhaps Kubrick did this to compensate for the fact that the assault scene had to be toned down for the movie, and so the audience can sympathize a bit more with the author and can also see how Alex's actions are still affecting the writer to present day. Finally, we have the biggest change between our three versions, the endings. In the original novel, the Ludovico technique makes Alex unable to stand up for himself as the idea of violence sickens him. This is pretty much where Vinyl ends the story. This leaves Victor with a pretty depressing ending as we see Victor being harmed while he just sits there. Back to the novel. From this point, the government gives Alex a chance at treatment to reverse the Ludovico technique, so he can freely choose between right and wrong. However, this leaves Alex feeling empty and devoid of satisfaction with doing the right or wrong thing. In the final 21st chapter of the novel, Alex tries making a new group of droogs, but it isn't as fun as it used to be for him. So, after a conversation with one of his old droogs, he decides to try to leave crime, settle down with a woman, and start a family. However, the original American publication decided to omit the final chapter as publishers thought it would appeal to American audiences more if that part was left out. So, this is probably why the film, which was made in America, also omits this ending. This gives the story a darker tone and a completely different message. The movie emphasizes a system that has failed, while the novel focuses on the fact that Alex has free will and is able to alter his future how he sees fit. So, in summary, it's clear Kubrick made a more faithful adaptation since he had a higher budget and more time. However, I don't think that was Warhol's goal in the first place. I think he used A Clockwork Orange as a template to show a different artistic style. Because of all the cuts he made, I think his version of the story also is a bit darker than the other two. Victor is never seen raping or killing anyone, but in the end, he's stuck defenseless for the rest of his life. Warhol seems to be warning everyone that this could happen to them, even if they're not a criminal, and trying to tell everyone to prevent this type of society from forming. While Burgess's novel and Kubrick's film are much closer adaptations, the removal of the final chapter is the primary factor that differentiates the two, making the film more ambiguous for the audience and the novel leaving the audience feeling more hopeful about the future of society.